Coach, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. It's good to hear your guys' voice. Where you been?
I knew you were gonna bust our. I knew you were gonna bust our balls over being out, maybe for Christmas.
That's a hell of a vacation. I hell 2 weeks off in the middle of the season. You're gonna have to tell me how you pulled that off.
I had COVID, and trust me, I milked the entire quarantine recommendation from the CDC. I kept it old school. I didn't go to the new school changes. I kept the old school 10 days.
Yeah,
you took the 10 days.
Yeah.
Well, we missed you, Coach. So appreciate you missing us as well. You dealing with this again, huh? Like you have for the past year plus with what's going on with Micah and Tyron and Anthony Brown?
Yes, I mean, it's, I just think it's a product of, the challenge. I mean, I think, for the most part, this is it's obviously a little different, virus that we're dealing with last year, it's so contagious. And, but yeah, it's today's NFL. So we're moving through it, and hopefully we'll have a really clean day today. It just came from the training room, so nothing to report so far. So it's just part of our daily exercise.
Coach, have you noticed throughout the league or on some of your players, like lingering after effects from having the virus? Like, just some things have changed within them, their abilities. Have you noticed anything different?
That's a great question. I think it's, probably more the timing of when they come back. I think if, just the personal experience here has been if a player has, a couple of days of practice, you really don't see you don't really see the effects. We're very mindful of it, particularly with, play time and things like that. Jordan Lewis is the example I'm talking about this past game. So, because, he really didn't have much prep time coming off of his quarantine, and played quite a bit in the game. So, yeah, I think you just got to be very cognizant of it. But, these guys are professional athletes. Obviously, you're talking about the upper 1%, as far as their health status and, way they're able to come back and play from this is obviously impressive.
Coach, what has been your rest versus rust experience in the league, and how you guys, planning on approaching it tomorrow night?
Well, my personal experience is I'm over on both rest and rust. So I've had a chance to do it both ways. I think it's like anything in this business, in this particular game of football. I think you just got to stay in tune with your current situation. The irony of all this is our players want to play. So there's no one that doesn't want to go to Philly. No one wants a day off or week off, and I just think that tells you so much about our football team and where we're at, because not only we focused on winning, but everybody's focused on continuing to improve and trying to make sure we're at the top of our game as we enter the tournament next week. So we're obviously going to play this one, and it's the best thing for us to do as a football team.
Coach, I know yesterday you said you obviously have some guys out, but some other guys are also under the weather. Like, at what point do you say, okay, I don't know if we need to have the starters out here if some guys aren't going to play? How do you balance, how long to play starters with some other guys you may not have out there that are just under the weather and not missing because of the virus?
I mean, that's really good insight, and that's really part of what we talk about. Coming off of last week's game is because 48 players to play a football game is you can't go into it with, hey, we're going to play these guys at this half and that half, because you think about it, when you're in that mode, it's preseason. When you're sitting players down at after 2 quarters and things like that, and you're operating off of a 90-man roster. So that's definitely not the case when you're 40, when you're going with 48. So the 48 that line up to play is, the focus is to get as much out of them as you possibly can. And, just because if you start sitting players down in the middle of the game, you're obviously applying stress to other areas of your depth chart.
Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy joining us here, 105 through the Fan. When it gets to the playoffs, this is the final week of the season, obviously. Have you found in the past that you prefer when you play a team that you've already played that year, or will you play a team in the playoffs that you haven't met up with that season?
Depends on the team.
There you go.
Prefer? That's an excellent question. I mean, I've turned around and played a division team, in a wild card, and that's the prep is is obviously, less on the volume is less, and you're more focused really on the intricacies of the personnel matchups where, when you're playing a new team, you're really trying to dial into the personnel matchups, more from a, film study standpoint. So I personally, I really don't have any preference because I think, my experience is when you get into these playoffs, every single one of these playoff games is so unique to the year, to the team, to the time, to who's lining up on that particular day. So, it's a whole different energy. Playoff football, there's nothing like it. We obviously I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We got to win this game Saturday night, but to answer your question, it's a long no answer here, but I really don't have a preference because playoff football it's exciting and this is what we all work for.
Coach, I love what you said the other day that going to Philly and playing in this weather is going to be good for you. We're looking at a possibility of Lambeau second round, but down the road. I just wanted to ask you about winning in the playoffs in cold weather. We know your December record, and obviously it gets colder then. Does it take a different type of team to win outside in the cold? We're used to hearing, Miami didn't want to go to the Bills back in the day, or dome teams and run game and defense travels. Is there something special with an intangible or the way your team is built to win playoff games in the cold?
Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, being part of a winter program, it goes all the way back to, the type of players that you try to bring in that, we always talked about the surface that we were playing on, and because the most important games are the December games and ultimately the January games. So, yeah, definitely. And frankly, when the schedule comes out every year, I actually like the fact that we have to play in the Northeast. Our division games, I don't want to play all three of them in December out there, but I think it's healthy for us from a challenge standpoint, and the timing of the challenge, because the potential of going north for a playoff game. It's just like anything. We'll have this experience of playing in 25, 30-degree weather. Saturday night in Philadelphia, I think it'll serve us well for our potential experiences in the playoffs. And I think those are all important. And frankly, you got to be honest. When you look at our football team, if you watch us run out of the tunnel, first thing you want to say is, "Hey, those guys play their games in a dome," and that's important. That's really important because it's important to be built that way to win the East. I mean, if you look at the NFC East over the years, the history of the NFC East, you're talking about big physical football teams. So, and we're definitely in that category, and that's what you have to be. That type of team has to travel. So, not only being big and physical, we're athletic. We're a very athletic football team, and I know that's something that we always paid a lot of attention to in Green Bay. Being a team up in the northern climate.
Has the thought? I know you had Rodgers, and you have a pretty good quarterback now. Do you think the thought has changed on throwing in the cold or throwing with the wind or the snow than it maybe was 10, 15 years ago, where we just kind of assume you'd have to run to win? Does that really alter your game plan, playing out in the cold and the elements as of late?
Well, the thing is, every one of those scenarios is different. Wind changes everything. Wind is the toughest element. I mean, if you go through all the elements of playing in bad weather, cold weather, no wind, to me is, there's not a really big change in your game plan. Rain, the focus is more on the ball. You get snow. Snow's probably the funnest, because if it's snowing with no wind, man, that's a snow globe day. That's that's fun to play in. So, but when the wind comes into the factor, windy days, wind and rain's the worst. So, those climate changes and the weather is part of your planning. Always has been for me personally as a play caller. So, but yeah, I think it's important to have those experiences, because let's be honest, it's just like anything. You don't want the biggest game of the year and you've never played in bad weather. That's not ideally where you want to be.
Coach brought up the wind, and that kind of, like you talked about, impacts the passing game, which impacts the receivers, and that's kind of been a talking point for us this week with Amari and CD and the targets or lack of targets that they've been getting at times in some of these games. What are the teams doing against them that's preventing them from being able to get the targets that top flight receivers would get?
Well, I think really the conversation is broader than that. I think when you look at the scope of our offense, you look at our overall statistics over a 16-game season so far, going into our 17th game. There has been a lot of production. And our stats reflect that. We score a lot of points over the course of the year. We've had production, and throughout the year, and clearly in tune with what the production's been, of late. But it really comes down to ball distribution, and really, I'm going to say there's been 5 games of the 16 that we didn't hit our goal of. Well, no, it's not even that. It's probably 4 games of the 16 that we didn't hit our goal of getting the ball distributed at least 55 times. I'm talking about the combination of rushes and completions. So in the big picture of things, the ball distribution by Dak and Kellen has been very good. But as far as getting it specifically to certain individuals, you're always focused on that, and I think there's timing also plays into that, what the defense does too, and so I'm not as overly concerned about the individual statistics. You like to see all your guys have big numbers, but the big numbers for the overall offense is the priority, and I think that definitely being focused on trying to get Mar and CD more primary receiver routes is really the answer to the question, because you can't always totally just say, hey, I'm going to line up and throw it to this guy all the time. There's definitely some of those. You have to have some of those components in your offense, and that's obviously what we always do. That's why we spend the time that we do in the game plan process.
Coach, kind of a general question, because when we hear Dak at the line of scrimmage, we're saying, oh, is he audibling out? Is he changing? Peyton Manning, Omaha. How often generally does that happen during an NFL game of a quarterback changing the play call, or is that just adjusting to the other option they have within the play? The original play that gets sent in, is it 2 plays all the time? And how often does Dak usually switch things up within a game?
Well, it's game plan specific. I think that's the focus of it. I think it's become more. It's clearly higher than it was 10 years ago. I know my personal experience, calling plays, close to 20 years. It's definitely increased over the years. I've been as high as maybe 15 play adjustments in a game, in a norm over the course of time would probably be closer to 10. So and that's part of defenses playing more disguise. Defenses, everybody's disguising. Where 10 years ago there's very few defense would hold their disguise to the snap of the ball or to the 1 or 2 seconds on a 40-second clock. Where now pretty much everybody does it. So that's all part of the win the pre-snap focus that I think NFL teams do a really good job of on both sides. So it's just part of how you play in today's game. So, but I think it also what you got to look for is how is the offense playing? Are they going to the line, and are they in the BPA mode, best play available mode, or are they in a run it mode where they're going up and just attacking the defense regardless of what they line up into? So you have those factors that go into how you want to play each and every week, and obviously that's driven by the matchups and how you view the other side.
Coach, before we let you go, you obviously have a ton of offensive experience. I think sometimes I forget how young Kellen is, and I was just curious whether you've been popping your head a little bit more into the offensive meetings, whether you find with a young coach offensively. Let me remind him of this. This is what I went through, and maybe I got away from during the course of the year. Has that been happening a little bit more, or you have the same level of communication every single week?
Well, that's really been the constant since we worked together. It'd be foolish for me not to share experiences and process and procedure with Kellen. Our procedure offensively, of how we put together a game plan and how we structure things is something that I have a lot of experience in, and it's reflected on how we game plan. So the process of how we do things is definitely in line with the way I've done it for the last 20 plus years. But he needs to coordinate the offense, and it's something that and hey, you can see going back to when we first started, when I told him he was going to run the offense, first question, are you really going to let me call it? And that was an adjustment for me too, just because of my history. But I've also have sat in his seat. But I always worked for a defensive head coach, so I really wanted to create the climate, the atmosphere for him to run the offense, because he can't fully call the game to his capabilities if he's trying to run a game plan that I want, or run the plays that he has to believe in the calls, and his connection and his relationship with Dak, and trying to build off the concepts that Dak has the most experiences. That was all part of the initial conversation. So so I'm in the offensive game plan meetings as much as possible. Always have been. It just really depends on what's going on around us here. And these 2 years have been different, just with a lot more administrative type stuff that interferes with some of these things. But it's my biggest role for Kellen is to make sure he gets the support and answers any questions, or I'm always sharing play caller experience with it, because I think just like anything in this league, you compete against these coordinators, or a coordinator has a history too, and everybody's comes from somewhere. Everybody's on a tree, and everybody has a base philosophy, and defensively how they look at games, how they call games, and so forth. So play calling is probably the biggest input that I have, and it's all reminder based, because at the end of the day, when we get to Sunday, he needs to call it with a free mind, and his connection with the quarterback is what we need during the games. So, and I think we have established that process here.
That
was a long answer.
I know, Coach. Well, you missed us. We're asking.
Yeah, I
know. We'll talk to you again in 3 weeks. No. In all seriousness, last random one. Going into the last game of a regular season, how aware are you of incentives that players want to hit or need to hit? Do you get a sheet? Does it get brought up like as a joke? Like, how often does that come up every year going into the last game?
This is the first time I've heard of it. Unless it's brought up to me, I made a critical mistake. One time not being in tune with the process of knowing what dictates a start for a player. And Donald Driver, someone who I've great admiration for, obviously a great player in Green Bay.
Lives here.
He lives here in Dallas, absolutely. And Donald had a record for consecutive starts, and no one had ever told me that whoever's on the field for the first play dictates a start in the NFL. And we came out in 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, and a receiver, and he just wasn't in on that particular play, and I think it was like a lead run. I mean, it was just a downhill type play, and it cost him a streak of consecutive starts.
Wow!
Yeah. So what a dumbass I was.
Well, Donald should have said in the meeting, "Hey, coach,
hang on a second." To be honest with you, his coach should have said. I mean, someone should have said something. So I mean, I was totally unaware of it, and just was sick about it after the fact. And so so I'm not really in tune with those, and unless someone brings it up.
Hey, man, good
I'll bring that up to him next time I see him.
Are you friends with Donald?
Yes, I am.
Thanks for getting.
That's a bad memory. I'll tell you what, he has 9,000 great memories. Guy is a stud. What a stud of a guy. So so that was a young head coach making a dumb mistake.
Coach, great to have you back. Good luck this week. Stay safe with the continued testing, and we'll catch up with you next week. Thank you.
All right. Have a great week, man. Thank you.
You too.